They thought they were starting a new life. A simple family, 5 daughters, a hard-working father, a devoted mother. The American dream of a fresh start. A home far from the city, surrounded by nature, silent, isolated. But what they found in that house wasn't peace. It wasn't tranquility. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would last for years. An invisible torment, relentless, cruel, and it would leave marks impossible to erase. This is the true story that inspired one of the most terrifying horror films of the last few decades. But the truth is far worse than what the movies dared to show. It all began in the winter of 1970. Roger and Carolyn Perron were looking for a new home, something spacious where they could raise their daughters freely. Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, 5 girls full of life, energy, and dreams. The perfect house appeared in rural Rhode Island. An old property built in the 18th century with over 8,000 square feet, open fields, barns, century-old trees, an idyllic setting. It was the Arnold farmhouse, a place with history and with secrets buried deep. The couple fell in love with the house at first sight. Even with signs of neglect, the smell of mold, the cracks in the walls, there was something charming about it. A sense of the past, a feeling of permanence. The previous owner handed over the keys with a silent warning. He simply muttered, "Best to keep the lights on at night." Roger laughed. Carolyn stayed quiet. They didn't know, but the house was already watching them. The move happened in January 1971. Cold, damp, heavy. The girls ran from room to room, excited by the space. Carolyn cleaned the antique furniture that had been left behind. Roger inspected the structure. Everything seemed normal, for now. But even in the first days, something felt off. Doors closed by themselves. Objects vanished. Whispers came from nowhere. Small sounds, always when no one was looking. Carolyn was the first to notice. The kitchen clock stopped exactly at 3:07 a.m. Every day, the stench of rot would appear without reason, especially in her bedroom. And a freezing wind flowed through the halls, even with the windows locked. At first, she thought it was stress from the move, just an adjustment, but soon she realized it wasn't just her. Cindy, the middle child, began waking up screaming. She said someone was pulling her foot at night. April spoke with an invisible lady who lived in the back room. Andrea felt she was being watched, even when alone. Roger tried to stay calm. He rationalized, blamed drafts, old wiring, childish imagination. But as the days passed, the events escalated. One of the upstairs rooms was colder than the rest. Everyone avoided it instinctively. Even the animals refused to enter. Nancy swore she heard crying behind the walls. Christine said she saw a woman standing next to her bed, head tilted, as if praying or cursing. Carolyn began to develop strange bruises, dark marks without explanation, and she felt a deep pain, as if something was draining her energy. Her joy started to fade. The house seemed to absorb everything, the light, the warmth, the laughter. Then came the smells, sulfur, rotting flesh, dead flowers. The air would change, grow dense, heavy, almost solid. Heartbeats would speed up, even before anything happened. And then, things began to happen. One night, Carolyn heard noises coming from the basement. Footsteps, muffled voices. She went down with a flashlight. The air was damp, dark, oppressive. And down there, she saw a pair of eyes, staring from the shadows. They weren't human. They vanished the moment the light touched them. She ran upstairs, locked the door, and never wanted to return. But the house didn't stop. The manifestations became physical. Doors slammed shut. Lights flickered. Pictures fell off the walls. Cindy was pushed from the stairs. Nancy had her hair pulled at night. Christine was found wandering through the house, sleepwalking, with her eyes open and face blank. And April began saying strange things. She said the lady she spoke with was named Bathsheba, a woman who hated mothers, who didn't like Carolyn's presence. That was the first time the name appeared. Bathsheba, a name that froze Carolyn's heart. She began to investigate, visited libraries, searched old records, and what she found was even more terrifying. The house had once belonged to the Arnold family, and among its past residents was a woman named Bathsheba Sherman. Born in the early 19th century, she was known for dark practices. Rumors said she had sacrificed her own child to Satan, that she cursed the land before dying, that she vowed to destroy any woman who dared live in that house. The official story said she died of natural causes, but the accounts told a different story. They said she hanged herself from the tree behind the house. Since then, more deaths followed on the property. Drownings, hangings, suicides, murders, families torn apart, as if the land were marked. Carolyn was convinced Bathsheba was there, and she wanted her out. The torment worsened by the day. During one dinner, plates flew off the table. One night, all the doors slammed shut at the same time. And then came the moment Carolyn felt something enter her. She froze. Her eyes rolled back. The girls screamed. Andrea swore she saw a shadow leaving her mother's body. Roger could no longer deny it. Something was there. Something evil. Something ancient. They sought help. Friends, priests, mediums. Nothing worked. Until a name reached them. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Paranormal investigators. Experts in possession. Demonologists. Carolyn contacted them. And the Warrens accepted the invitation. But what they found in that house went beyond anything they had faced before. What they would confront there would become one of the darkest chapters of their lives. And what happened next would mark the Perron family forever. Because the evil wasn't just watching. It had already entered, and it had no intention of leaving. Carolyn stood in the middle of the room, her gaze empty, hands trembling, breath shallow, as if she had run for miles without moving. Andrea cried in the corner, clutching her sisters. Roger, unsure what to do, just stared at his wife, as if he no longer recognized her. That night, something had entered her. It wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't psychological. It was real. Something ancient. And now it lived inside the woman he loved. That was the state in which the Warrens found the Perron family. Fear, panic, desperation. Lorraine said she felt the presence the moment she stepped onto the property. It was heavy, oppressive, suffocating, as if the air was contaminated. Ed walked through the house in silence, locking eyes with each of the girls. The terror in their faces said more than any testimony. Carolyn, sitting in the living room chair, was quiet. But her eyes were no longer the same. Lorraine, sensitive since childhood, felt something as she approached. A dark energy, like a thick layer of hate clinging to Carolyn's skin. They had no doubts. That house harbored a malevolent entity, and the family was under attack. But before acting, the Warrens needed to understand what they were facing. The investigation began immediately. Ed and Lorraine spent entire days on the property. They gathered testimonies, photographed every room, recorded audio at night. The recordings revealed unexplained noises, voices whispering in ancient Latin, cracks, laughter, muffled screams. But the most terrifying thing was the pattern. The manifestations always intensified around Carolyn, as if the entity had chosen a target. Lorraine dug through historical archives, death records, property deeds, 19th century newspapers, and the name Bathsheba Sherman came up repeatedly, always surrounded by tragedy. According to local accounts, Bathsheba was a reclusive woman. No one knew where she had come from. She lived in the same house the Perrons now occupied. Her baby died under suspicious circumstances. Neighbors swore she had sacrificed the child in a witchcraft ritual. The infant's skull had puncture wounds, as if something sharp had been driven into it. But nothing was ever proven. Bathsheba was never tried. Over time, she withdrew, until she was found dead hanging from a tree behind the house. Since then, the property became known as cursed ground. Many who lived there went mad, others disappeared, and the few who survived never wanted to talk. But now the curse had awakened again, and Carolyn was the new victim. During one of the visits, Lorraine had a vision. While holding a piece of Carolyn's clothing, she saw the image of Bathsheba, a deformed face, lifeless eyes, the figure of a woman who had renounced her humanity. In the vision, Bathsheba climbed up Carolyn's back, wrapping her body with skeletal hands and whispering words of hatred. Lorraine woke up screaming. From that moment on, the Warrens knew. The entity wanted to take control of Carolyn's body and use it for something unthinkable. The manifestations grew even more intense. At night, the girls heard footsteps on the roof. But when they checked, there was nothing there. Carolyn was awakened by scratches on the walls, coming from inside. Nancy began having nightmares in which she saw her mother being hanged from the backyard tree by Bathsheba's own spirit. Then came the most terrifying incident yet. Carolyn disappeared. In the middle of the night, Roger was awoken by the girls' screams. He ran through the halls, searched every room, but his wife was nowhere to be found. The basement door was open, He went down and found her on the floor unconscious, with marks around her neck, as if someone had tried to hang her. When she woke up, Carolyn remembered nothing, but she kept repeating a phrase in Latin, "Hosta meum contere Deus." God shall crush my enemy. It wasn't her voice. It wasn't her eyes. That was the breaking point. The Warrens decided to perform an exorcism. But unlike what many believe, the process isn't simple. It involves serious risk. It can make things worse. They tried to convince the church to intervene, but without official approval, the ritual would have to be done with extreme caution. Lorraine insisted. There was no more time. On the chosen night, everything was prepared. The basement was cleared. Candles were lit. Religious relics arranged in a circle. Carolyn was brought to the center. Her breathing had changed. It was deeper, more animalistic. The ritual began. Latin words echoed through the walls. The lights flickered. The cold intensified. And then she laughed. Carolyn began to laugh. A hoarse, discordant laugh, as if several voices were laughing at once. Her body contorted. Her eyes rolled back. The veins on her neck bulged and pulsed. Andrea, hiding behind the door, watched everything. She swears she saw Bathsheba's face emerge from her mother's face. The session lasted hours, and in the end, Carolyn collapsed. When she woke up, she cried, begged for forgiveness, didn't know what she had done. But the presence was still there. The entity had retreated, but not surrendered. After that, the Warrens recommended the family leave the house. But it wasn't that simple. Financially, the Perrons were trapped. They couldn't sell. They couldn't run. All that was left was to endure. With time, the attacks lessened. But they never stopped entirely. What happened during those months left scars. Cindy developed a phobia of the dark. Christine became withdrawn for years. Andrea wrote a book, told everything, without filters, and claimed nothing shown in the films comes close to the real horror. The story made it to the big screen. Hollywood softened it, dramatized it, stylized it, but the essence remained, because the truth still lives on. The evil never disappeared. The house still stands, and according to those who've been there, its silence still pulses, as if it's waiting, just waiting, because in the end, what happened to the Perrons could happen to anyone. All it takes is opening the wrong door, ignoring the warning, believing that evil is just superstition.